The conservative movement certainly split over tariffs right now. With me to talk about it is the Executive Vice President of the National Taxpayers Union, Brandon Arnold. Brandon, good to have you here. In fairness, I'm reading the Financial Times, a Chinese publication, and the Chinese have been, pushing, prodding, begging to get these tariffs lifted since Joe Biden took office. And so now Joe Biden looks like he's going to cave on this. And what do we get out of it? What do we get out of it, the United States and the taxpayers?
Well, right now, the tariffs are actually causing a pretty large burden on American taxpayers, on American manufacturers and businesses. It costs us about $50 billion, a little more than $50 billion each and every year to pay these tariffs. So alleviating them at any time, I think, is a good idea for the economy. But particularly now, the Peterson Institute of Economics actually says that it can drop inflation by about 1.3% just by lowering the cost of goods for consumers, for increasing the amount of goods that our exporters can get to other countries, and generating economic activity as a result.
I don't think anybody actually believes it's going to drop inflation by a 0.3 or a 1.5. I don't think that's a fairly accepted by whom. One place says that. Come on, Brandon. That's one obscure group of people that says that. I don't think anybody believes that across the board, because if they did, Janet Yellen, of course, I would be giving her credit for knowing what's going on, would be advocating for that. She's not. She seems to have no idea what to do about inflation, and neither does anybody else in the administration, not your Commerce Secretary, not your Secretary of the Treasury. Nobody seems to know what to do. I have an idea: increase oil production here in America, but that's just me. I don't see how reducing these tariffs, another gift to China from a family, the Biden family has given plenty of gifts to China, and them to them, and the Chinese back to them. I don't see it. And a lot of people don't see it, Brandon. You're going to have to do a better job of articulating why this is good for America and not good for China.
Well, I think it's good for America because Americans are paying the tariffs. And if you look at tariffs on products like seafood, like clothing, like shoes, these are consumer level tariffs. So those are, of course, being paid by people, everyday Americans that hit particularly low income Americans the hardest. If you're struggling to pay for your grocery bills, you're struggling to fill your tank with gasoline, the last thing you need to do is spend a little bit more to put flip-flops on your kids and get them in a new swimsuit this summer. So yeah, those tariffs hit consumers, they hit our manufacturers. It's not just the Peterson Institute. There's pretty large economic consensus out there. Even Janet Yellen, even Gina Raimondo say that we want to reduce some of these tariffs. We may disagree on which ones. They seem to like the steel and aluminum ones, largely because the labor unions like those tariffs the most. But they seem to be pretty much pushing Biden, unlike some other folks in his administration, to alleviate at least some of these tariffs. No, you're right. It won't solve all the problems with regard to inflation.
Just so I'm clear on this, so I understand, though, Yellen and Raimondo want these tariffs lifted. Is that what you just told me, right?
Some of the tariffs lifted.
So two of the people in the cabinet that are clearly economically illiterate, which is fair to say about either one of those people, they're economically illiterate. They want to lift the tariffs, and you agree with that. That surprises me.
Well, I think there's a lot of other conservatives, libertarians, free market advocates that are very, very supportive of tariff reductions. We see that in some of the free traders in Congress as well, like Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, certainly supportive of reducing these tariffs because of the relief that they would provide to
Pat Toomey, not exactly a conservative either. And to be fair, Brandon, Pat Toomey is another squishy individual. You need better people to testify here. I like you. I do. You're going to have to do a better job of testifying. Pat Toomey, not a good person to put on the stand. Janet Yellen.
He's the former head
Raimondo,
of the
and?
Well,
and he's still not a conservative individual. He's not a conservative individual. You look at these people. These are people that voted to send $54 billion to Ukraine. I mean, maybe we could, you say we'd save $50 billion to the U.S. on the tariffs. Maybe we should save $54 billion and keep our money to home instead of sending it to a war with a country that's not actually our ally. But I digress.
I think we would agree with one another on there needs to be a lot more savings, and I think fiscal responsibility is a huge part of the solution to this inflation crisis, getting our economy back up in order means that we need to balance our books much better than we did. So I think we very much agree there, Steve. We need to cut spending dramatically. The American Rescue Plan Act that Biden pushed into law in March of last year has increased inflation to the tune of about 3 percentage points, so nearly double what I think the trade liberalization could bring to this economy. So that is the biggest culprit of inflation. Energy production obviously is huge as well. I think we agree very much there. Sounds like we disagree a little bit on the tariff issue, though.
Well, I mean, I would do this with you, Brandon. Side bet for $1. I'll take the over-under on the 1.3% of inflation because I think that Joe Biden is going to roll back these tariffs. But as Robert Gates said, he's been wrong in every, international policy decision of his entire life. I think he'll keep his record here. I'll take the under on how much it impacts inflation. Okay, on 1.3%, way under, in fact. I don't think it's going to have any significant impact because the real problem here is bad energy policy. And while China's building coal-fired power plants and finishing one a week, either in their country or in other countries around the world, we're shutting down our power plants, disconnecting from the grid. We'll be sitting in the dark soon with candles and be driving to work on a donkey cart. But apparently that'll be good for America. But, I digress again. I'll give you the last word. I appreciate you being here. Yes, we disagree, but I respect you being here, so give me the last word.
I'll just say I would take the under as well because I don't think we're going to see full-scale tariff reduction. I think we'll see very limited tariff reduction, so we won't get a huge benefit there, unfortunately. But I'm with you 100% on energy production. I think that's the number one thing that Biden should be focused on right now. Unfortunately, he's not. But ramping up domestic energy production would be the most important thing that we can do to combat inflation right now. I would say tariffs aren't far behind, but number one, it's certainly energy production.
Well, there's no question. If American oil was put onto the world market the way it was a couple of years ago, we could drop the price per barrel by as much as 50%. America runs on vast quantities of cheap energy, and anything short of that puts us in a bad position. Tariffs and all these other things are secondary to that one thing, and that we agree, Brandon, very much. Always good to see you, my friend. We'll talk again soon.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. You can't always agree, right? Coming up after the break, I should say.